I met Jennifer in 1989 at a charity auction in downtown Portland. The conference room smelled like expensive cologne and quiet desperation. She was holding a paddle with the number 47, bidding on a weekend spa package she didn't really want, just to contribute to the cause. I was there because my assistant had insisted I show my face at community events. I wore a navy blazer I'd had for 8 years and drove a 10-year-old Toyota Camry that ran perfectly fine. Jennifer had this laugh that filled the whole room. When she won that spa package for $300, she turned around and our eyes met. She mouthed, "Too much?" and I shrugged with a smile. After the auction, we talked by the punch bowl for 2 hours. She was a second-grade teacher. I told her I worked in logistics. We've been married for 34 years now. We live in a comfortable ranch house in Beaverton, about 1,800 square feet, with a yard big enough for our old golden retriever, Maximum. Jennifer drives a 6-year-old Honda CR-V. I kept that Camry until it hit 200,000 miles, then replaced it with a Subaru Outback I bought used from a dealership in Hillsborough. Our daughter Emily is 32 now, works as a physical therapist, lives in a nice 2-bedroom apartment in the Pearl District that I quietly bought 15 years ago and put in a trust for her 25th birthday. She thinks it was from her grandmother's estate. She pays what she believes is rent to a property management company. The money goes into an education fund for the grandchildren she doesn't have yet. Jennifer never asked too many questions about finances. I handled the bills, she handled everything else, and we both contributed to what we called our life account. She knew I had done well with some early investments in the 80s. She knew we were comfortable. She didn't know I owned 58% of the medical device company her father built from nothing. Robert Chen was brilliant, driven, and the most arrogant man I'd ever met. He'd immigrated from Taiwan in 1967 with $40 and a degree in mechanical engineering. By 1975, he'd founded Chen Medical Solutions, making surgical instruments that hospitals across the West Coast depended on. By 1985, the company was doing $20 million a year in revenue. That's when Robert nearly lost everything. A supplier lawsuit, a product recall, and the recession hit him all at once. He needed $7 million in capital immediately, or he'd lose the company to his creditors. The banks wouldn't touch him. His investors had already bailed. I was 29 years old, working for a logistics firm, but I'd been investing since I was 22. My father had died when I was 17 and left me $130,000. Most kids would have blown it. I put it in the market, educated myself, made careful moves, turned it into $800,000 by the time I was 27. By 1985, I had just over $9 million in various holdings. I saw the notice about Chen Medical in a business journal, did my research. The company was sound, the products were excellent, the problem was purely cash flow and timing. I had my attorney approach Robert with an offer. $7 million for 58% ownership. I'd be a silent partner. He'd remain CEO, run operations exactly as he wanted. I wouldn't interfere. The only condition was anonymity. Robert took the deal. He never knew my name. The paperwork showed an LLC registered in Delaware, represented by a law firm in Seattle. The day the money transferred, his company was saved. Within 3 years, Chen Medical Solutions was back to profitable operations. By 1995, they were doing $140 million annually. Today, the company is worth $920 million. My 58% stake is worth roughly $530 million. Robert doesn't know this. Jennifer doesn't know this. Emily doesn't know this. When I met Jennifer 4 years after that investment, I genuinely didn't know she was Robert Chen's daughter. Portland's not that small, but it's not that big either. By the time she mentioned her father owned a medical device company, we'd been dating for 3 months, and I was already in love with her. I had a choice to make. I could tell her the truth and risk losing her, or I could see where things went. I convinced myself I'd tell her eventually, when the timing was right. The timing was never right. When I met Robert for the first time at their family home in the West Hills, he shook my hand with the grip of a man who'd built everything himself. He asked what I did. I said logistics. He nodded politely and changed the subject.
I wasn't important enough to warrant follow-up questions. Over the years, Robert tolerated me. I was the man who married his daughter, so he accepted my presence at holidays and birthdays, but he never saw me as an equal. At family dinners, he'd talk about the business with Jennifer's brother Marcus, who worked in sales at the company. I'd sit there, eating quietly, listening to Robert explain supply chain strategies I'd helped finance. Jennifer's mother, Linda, was kinder. She'd ask about my work, about Emily, always seemed genuinely interested. But even Linda had a way of making it clear that the family's real pride was in Chen Medical Solutions. The arrangement worked for 30 years. The company thrived. My investment multiplied 20-fold. I took modest distributions through the LLC, enough to ensure Jennifer and Emily never worried about money, but never enough to raise questions. I worked legitimate jobs in logistics, eventually consulting, made decent money on my own, and kept our lifestyle deliberately modest.
Robert retired as CEO 5 years ago at 73. Marcus took over, but Robert remained chairman of the board. The company had brought in professional management, expanded into cardiac devices, opened a manufacturing facility in Vietnam. The growth was steady, impressive. Last month, Jennifer got a call from her mother. Family dinner at the estate, Sunday evening, 6 o'clock. "Your father has an announcement," Linda said. Jennifer hung up and looked at me with concern. "That doesn't sound good. He never announces announcements." We drove to the West Hills that Sunday in Jennifer's CRV. The house sat on 2 acres with a view of downtown Portland and Mount Hood in the distance. Robert had built it in 1998, 6,000 square feet, all glass and steel and imported stone. Marcus was already there with his wife, Stephanie.
Emily arrived 10 minutes after us, apologetic, still wearing her scrubs from a shift at the hospital. We sat in the formal dining room, the one with the chandelier that cost more than most people's cars. Robert stood at the head of the table, looking older than I'd seen him, thinner, with that particular weariness that comes from finally acknowledging time's passage. "I've made a decision about the company," he said. No preamble, no small talk. "The board has approved a succession plan. Marcus will remain CEO, but we're bringing in a new CFO and restructuring operations. The company needs fresh leadership to compete in the next decade." He paused, looked directly at Marcus. "You'll need support, strong management around you." Marcus nodded, confident, ready. At 48, he'd worked at Chen Medical for 22 years, climbed from sales rep to regional manager to VP to CEO. He'd earned it, mostly. Then Robert turned to me. The look in his eyes was something between pity and duty. "David, I know you've been in logistics, consulting, various things over the years." He said it the way you describe someone's hobbies. "The company is expanding our distribution operations. We need someone to manage warehouse coordination at the Gresham facility. It's an important role. The position pays $42,000 a year to start, with benefits." The room went completely silent. Jennifer's face flushed red. Emily's mouth actually fell open. Linda looked at her plate. "Dad," Jennifer started, but Robert held up his hand. I'm offering David an opportunity to be part of something meaningful, to finally contribute to the family legacy. It's honest work, good work. Most men would be grateful. I felt every eye on me. 34 years of biting my tongue. 34 years of listening to this man's condescension. 34 years of knowing I owned more of his company than he did.
Think about it, Robert said, turning back to Marcus. Discuss it with Jennifer. Let me know by Friday. The dinner lasted another 45 excruciating minutes. Jennifer barely spoke. Emily kept glancing at me with a mixture of anger and confusion. Marcus and Stephanie made awkward conversation about their vacation plans. When we finally left, Jennifer didn't say a word until we were in the car, halfway down the driveway. $42,000. Her voice was shaking. A warehouse coordinator. Like you're some charity case. Jenny, it's fine. It's not fine. You have a degree. You've run your own consulting practice. You've managed supply chains for companies 10 times larger than his, and he offers you a warehouse job like you're some nephew he's throwing a bone to? I drove in silence. There was so much I wanted to say. I'm calling him tomorrow, Jennifer said. This is humiliating. For both of us. Don't, I said quietly. Please don't.
She looked at me, confused, hurt.
Why not?
David, you're 63 years old. You're not taking a $42,000 warehouse job because my father feels obligated to employ his daughter's husband. We're not broke. We don't need his charity. I pulled into our driveway, turned off the engine, and sat there in the darkness. Jennifer, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you 30 years ago. I explained everything. The investment in 1985, the 58% ownership, the LLC in Delaware, the silent partnership agreement, the $530 million in equity, the distributions I'd taken over the years, carefully filtered through investments and accounts she'd never asked about. She didn't say anything for a long time, just stared through the windshield at our garage door. 34 years, she finally said. You've owned my father's company for 34 years and never told me. I wanted to tell you. 1,000 times I almost did. But you didn't. She opened her car door. I need to think. She went inside. I sat in the car for another 20 minutes. The next morning I called my attorney, Richard Palmer. We'd worked together for 38 years. He'd structured the original Chen medical deal. It's time, I said. Are you certain? Richard's voice was careful. Once this is out, everything changes. I know. What do you want me to send? The full disclosure. Ownership structure, board voting rights, distribution history, everything. Send it to Robert Chen directly. Copy the board members, and copy Marcus. When? Today. Richard was quiet for a moment. This will destroy him, David. His pride, his legacy story, everything he's built his identity around. I know, I said, but I just got offered a warehouse job in my own company. The email went out at 2:30 that afternoon. By 4 o'clock, my phone was ringing. Robert Chen's name on the caller ID. I didn't answer. He called 6 more times. Then Marcus called. Then Linda called. I let them all go to voicemail. Jennifer still wasn't speaking to me, but she was there when Robert showed up at our house at 7 that evening. I opened the door, and he was standing there in the same expensive suit he'd worn to dinner the night before. But now he looked like he'd aged 5 years in 24 hours. We need to talk, he said. I stepped aside, let him in. Jennifer appeared from the kitchen, arms crossed,
expression unreadable. Robert stood in our modest living room, looking around like he'd never really seen it before. The furniture we'd had for 15 years, the family photos on the mantel, the dog bed where Max was sleeping. "I've spent the entire day with attorneys," Robert said, "going through documents, verifying everything. It's all true." "Yes," I said. "You've owned 58% of my company since 1985. Yes. You saved my company."
The $7 million. It came from you. Yes. Robert's face went through several emotions. Confusion, anger, something that might have been respect. Then back to anger. Why? His voice cracked. Why stay silent? Why let me believe I built this alone? Why marry my daughter and never tell her? Never tell anyone? I looked at Jennifer, then back at Robert. Because it was never about the company. It was never about the money. When I made that investment, I was 29 years old and saw a good opportunity. When I met Jennifer, I didn't know who her father was. By the time I did, I was already in love with her. "You should have told me," Robert said. "When you married her, you should have told me." Maybe. Probably. But every time I thought about it, I realized something. You needed to believe you'd saved yourself. You needed that story. And honestly, Robert, I didn't need the credit. I needed Jennifer. I needed Emily. I needed this life. I gestured around the room. This house, this quiet, this normal.
Robert shook his head. "You let me treat you like you were nothing. For 30 years. You treated me like I was nothing because you needed to feel superior to someone. That's on you, not me." The words landed hard. Robert flinched. "Last night," I continued, "you offered me a $42,000 warehouse job in the company I own the controlling stake in. Not because you thought I'd be good at it, not because you respected me, but because you felt obligated to throw your son-in-law some scraps. I didn't know, you didn't know, because you never asked. You never cared to know. You saw a man in a modest house, driving a modest car, living a modest life, and you assumed that meant I was modest in every way. You confused humility with inability." Jennifer moved to stand beside me, not touching, but beside. Robert looked at both of us. "What happens now? Are you taking over the company? Removing Marcus? Removing me?" "No," I said.
Marcus is doing a fine job as CEO. The company's in good hands. I've been a silent partner for 38 years, and I'll remain a silent partner. Nothing changes operationally.
"Then what do you want?"
I want you to understand something, Robert. I don't need your company. I don't need your approval. I don't need your family legacy. I have my own life, my own investments, my own identity. Chen Medical Solutions was a good investment that became a great investment. But it's never been who I am. I took Jennifer's hand. She didn't pull away. What I need from you is respect. Not because of the money or the ownership, but because I've been your son-in-law for 34 years, and I've earned it by being a good husband to your daughter and a good father to your granddaughter. Robert stood there, diminished in our small living room, finally seeing clearly. I'll expect the board documentation to reflect my ownership accurately going forward, I said. Richard will send over the updated governance protocols, but beyond that, everything continues as it has. Robert nodded slowly. The warehouse job offer was insulting, Jennifer said, speaking for the first time. Dad, I love you, but that was insulting. I know,
Robert said quietly. He looked at me. I apologize. Accepted, I said. He turned to leave, then stopped at the door. Why a modest life? If you have $500 million, why live like this? I looked around our home, at the comfortable couch where Jennifer and I watched movies, at the kitchen table where we'd had thousands of meals, at the bookshelf full of books we'd actually read. Because this is the life I want. The money is just money. It sits in accounts, it grows, it generates returns that I reinvest or donate. But this? I gestured around the room. This is real. This is what matters. Robert left. Jennifer and I stood there in silence. Are you still angry? I asked. Yes, she said.
I'm furious that you kept this from me for 34 years.
I know.
But I'm also trying to understand why.
She sat down on the couch, and I sat beside her. You saved my father's company. You could have taken control, put your name on everything, been the CEO yourself. Instead, you let him have the credit and the glory while you just stayed quiet? Your father needed to be the self-made man. That story was important to him, to his identity, to how he saw himself. If I'd revealed my role, it would have destroyed that narrative. But what about your narrative? What about taking credit for what you actually did? Jenny, I've never needed external validation. My father died when I was 17. I learned early that identity doesn't come from what other people think of you. It comes from what you know about yourself and what you do with your life. She was quiet for a long moment. You still should have told me. You're right. I should have.
I was afraid you'd think I was trying to manipulate you or your family. I was afraid you'd leave me. And then years passed, and the secret became part of the architecture of our life. And I didn't know how to tell you without destroying everything. Did you ever use the money for us? For Emily? Yes. The house, Emily's apartment, her college tuition that you thought came from my consulting income, the medical bills when your mother had her surgery and you thought your father paid for it. I've taken small distributions over the years, just enough to make sure we were always secure, always comfortable, but never enough to raise questions. Jennifer processed this. So we're not actually comfortable middle class. We're secretly wealthy. We're whatever we choose to be. The money exists, but it doesn't define us unless we let it. She looked at me with those same eyes I'd fallen in love with at the charity auction. What do we do now? Whatever you want. We can keep living exactly as we are. We can travel, buy a bigger house, give everything away to charity. The money is ours, together. It's been in a trust for 30 years with both our names on it. Both our names? Since when? Since 1992, 3 years after we married. Richard set it up. Half of everything goes to you automatically. It's always been yours. She started crying. Not sad crying, something else. Relief, maybe. Or release. I thought we were barely getting by sometimes, she said. When Emily was little, when the car needed repairs, when the roof leaked, I thought we were struggling. We weren't struggling. I just didn't see the point in spending money we didn't need to spend. The car got repaired, the roof got fixed. We were fine. But we could have been more than fine. We could have been comfortable. Jenny, we were comfortable. We are comfortable. Look around. We have everything we actually need. She wiped her eyes. I need time to process this. I know. Take all the time you need.
Over the next few weeks, things slowly normalized. Jennifer stayed angry in that particular way where you're angry, but you're also trying to understand why someone did what they did. We had long conversations late at night. She asked questions I'd been afraid to answer for 3 decades. Emily came over one Saturday morning, sat us both down, and demanded the full story. When I finished explaining, she was quiet for a long time. "So, the apartment I've been renting for 7 years, you own it?" "Technically, a trust owns it, but yes. And my college tuition that I thought you and Mom saved for my entire childhood, that came from my Chen medical distributions, filtered through various investment accounts." "Jesus, Dad." She put her head in her hands. "I've been so proud of making it on my own. I've been telling my friends how I'm financially independent." "You are financially independent," I said.
You have a career you built yourself. You work hard. You're excellent at what you do. You live within your means. The apartment and the tuition just meant you weren't buried in debt while you figured out your life. That's what parents do, if they can.
"But you could do so much more."
I could. But would that help you or hurt you? Would growing up knowing you had access to hundreds of millions of dollars have made you a better person or a more entitled person? Emily thought about that.
"I don't know."
Neither did I. So I made a choice. I gave you stability and opportunity without the burden of expectation. You became who you were going to become without the weight of wealth defining every decision.
"Other kids have trust funds," Emily said. "Other kids grow up wealthy and turn out fine."
Some do. But I watched what wealth did to your grandfather. It made him proud and hard and dismissive of anyone he perceived as beneath him. I didn't want that for you." Emily looked at Jennifer.
"Are you okay with all this, Mom?"
Jennifer shrugged.
"I'm trying to be. It's a lot to process. Your father kept a massive secret for our entire marriage, but he also used that secret to protect us, support us, and let us build authentic lives. I'm still deciding if I'm more angry or grateful." "Can I tell my boyfriend?" Emily asked suddenly. "No," Jennifer and I said simultaneously. "Why not?" "Because," I said, "the moment people know you have access to significant wealth, everything changes. Every friendship, every relationship, every interaction becomes colored by that knowledge. People treat you differently. They want things from you. They make assumptions." "Marcus knows now," Emily said. "Grandfather knows. How's that going to work at family dinners?" "Awkwardly," Jennifer said. "Very, very awkwardly." She was right. The next family gathering was Thanksgiving, and the entire dynamic had shifted. Robert was polite, almost deferential.
Marcus tried to make small talk about the business, then seemed to realize he was essentially giving me status updates on my own investment, and went quiet. Linda was the only one who seemed genuinely unaffected. She hugged me like she always had, told me I looked good, asked about my golf game. Later, when we were alone in the kitchen, she smiled and said, "I always knew there was more to you than Robert gave you credit for." "You did?" "A woman knows. The way you carried yourself. The way you were never bothered by his dismissiveness. You had a quiet confidence that only comes from knowing something others don't." She patted my arm. "I'm glad the truth is out. It was exhausting watching him underestimate you all these years." December brought a new complication. Marcus called and asked if we could meet for coffee. Just the two of us. We met at a Starbucks near his office. He looked tired, stressed, older than 48. "I need advice," he said after we sat down. "The board is pushing for aggressive expansion into the cardiac device market. It's a huge capital investment, significant risk, but potentially transformative for the company. Dad is against it. He thinks we should stay focused on our core products. What do you think? I asked. I think Dad built this company in a different era. The medical device market is changing fast. If we don't innovate and expand, we'll be acquired or obsolete within 10 years. He paused. But I also know that, as majority shareholder, you have the final say on any major strategic decisions. I sipped my coffee. What does your gut tell you? Expand. Take the risk. We have the capital, the expertise, the market opportunity. Then do it. Marcus blinked. Just like that? You're the CEO. You're the one in the company every day. You know the market, the competition, the opportunities. I'm just the guy who wrote a check in 1985. This is your company to run.
But Dad!
Your father built something incredible, and now it's your turn to take it to the next level. He won't like it, but evolution requires change. Make the case to the board, get the votes, move forward. You'll have my proxy support. Marcus looked relieved and slightly confused.
I thought you'd want to be more involved. Make decisions, chair board meetings, that kind of thing.
Why would I do that? I don't want to run a medical device company. I never did. I wanted to make a good investment, and I did. The rest is just noise.
You're really just going to stay silent? Even now that everyone knows?
Marcus, I've been silent for 38 years. I'm good at it.
He smiled for the first time since we'd sat down.
Thank you. Don't thank me. Just run the company well. And maybe next time, don't assume people in modest houses are incapable of complex thought.
He had the grace to look embarrassed. I apologize for that.
The warehouse job offer was Dad's idea, but I didn't push back on it like I should have. Apology accepted. Now go transform the cardiac device market. That night, Jennifer and I took Max for a walk around the neighborhood. It was raining, typical Portland December, but we both liked the rain.
Marcus came to see you today,
Jennifer said. She always knew. He did. Wanted my blessing for a major expansion. I gave it.
Are you going to get more involved? Start going to board meetings?
No.
Why not?
I thought about how to explain it. When I was 29, I made an investment. It was smart, it paid off, and it's provided financial security for our entire family. But it was never meant to become my identity. I've spent 38 years living the life I actually wanted, not the life money could buy.
But now everyone knows. The secret's out.
The secret being out doesn't change what I want. I still want to walk the dog in the rain with you. I still want to read books and watch movies and have breakfast on Sunday mornings. I still want the life we've built. Jennifer stopped walking. Max kept going, pulling against the leash, but Jennifer stood there in the rain, looking at me.
You're a very strange man, David Miller.
I know.
Most men would want the power, the recognition, the status.
I'm not most men.
No, she said, stepping closer. You're not. You're the man who saw what mattered before you had money to confuse things. And you're the man who kept seeing what mattered, even after you did. She kissed me there in the rain, under a streetlight, with an impatient golden retriever pulling at his leash. I'm still angry you kept the secret, she said. But I understand why you did.
That's all I can ask for. We walked home through wet streets, past houses full of people living their own complicated lives, and I thought about how strange and wonderful it was that 38 years ago,
I'd made a decision to save a company I didn't care about, and that decision had somehow led to this moment, this walk, this life. Robert Chen still doesn't fully understand why I chose to stay invisible. Marcus is slowly figuring it out. Emily is processing what it means to be the granddaughter of a medical device magnate and the daughter of a silent multimillionaire. But Jennifer, after 34 years and one revealed secret, gets it completely. The money was never the point. The power was never the goal. The recognition was never necessary. The point was always this: a good life, honestly lived, with people you love, doing work that matters to you, and having the quiet confidence that comes from knowing who you are, regardless of what anyone else thinks.
Some people need to prove themselves to the world. I only ever needed to prove myself to myself. And maybe, after 3 decades, to my wife. The rest is just numbers and accounts, board documents, and the fascinating irony of watching a man offer you a warehouse job in your own company. I never took that job, by the way. I'm still in consulting, still working with small logistics firms, still driving my Subaru, still living in our 1,800-square-foot house. Chen Medical Solutions is doing well. The cardiac device expansion is proceeding ahead of schedule. My 58% stake is now worth approximately $640 million. And I'm still the man who shows up to family dinners, eats quietly, and lets other people tell their stories about success. Because some stories don't need to be told. They just need to be lived.